Thanks so much for having us, Ben, Josh, Libby, Baum. Really excited to be here reading with Forsyth and Melissa. I'm just going to read a really short passage from early on in Negative Space that speaks to the relationship between the images that appear throughout and the story. I don't think you need any background, so I'm just going to jump in. Some people grow up with religious iconography. I grew up with my father's art. Instead of saints or crosses or scrolls, I had dogs, deer, rabbits, and the female form. Deer with human hands for antlers, dogs leaping into space, rabbits in targets, rabbits in burrows, rabbits in the sky. They were my sacred images, created by the dirty, calloused hands of my alchemist father. I learned the language and stories of my father's art before I learned nursery rhymes. I knew that the women he drew were my mother, and that he drew her because he loved her and couldn't believe how beautiful she was. I knew the deer and dogs and rabbits were him, that the hands he sculpted were modeled after his own hands. I learned to draw by copying his drawings, learned to work clay by playing with his discarded scraps. I learned to understand the world around me by trying to recognize what my father might think was beautiful. Understanding that every walk we took was a scavenger hunt, and that anything could be sculpture material. Everyone inherits their parents' stories, their baggage, the symbols through which they interpret life, but perhaps this is especially true and inescapable for the children of artists, who are steeped in it and surrounded in it in such a literal sense, growing up in homes decorated with tangible pieces of our parents' psyches externalized. In his copy of The Language of Fire, a collection of literary criticism by Maurice Blanchot, next to a line that claims that the written sentence can, quote, reduce the heaviness of things to the agility of signs, my father wrote in pencil, and sculpture, whose business is the heaviness of things, or the heaviness of things as signs and agile. He was arguing in the Marginalia that sculpture can turn life to symbols too, but it uses heaviness to do it, rather than resisting the heaviness of human existence, capturing our experiences and thoughts and emotions, bringing them down to the solid earth like a wild bird in a cage. All the intangible parts of him that I was so afraid to lose were right there, captured in the heaviness of his work. My father had left me the letter I wanted so badly after all. It was just in code. All I had to do was decipher it. I knew what some of his images represented, but I didn't know how they all fit together, how one led into the next, or exactly when he started each series. If I could figure out what was going on in his life when he made each piece, I thought, maybe I could read his sculptures like a story. Maybe I could almost hear my father's voice. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Passage from the book. I'm so glad to be here reading and talking with my two pals. And thank you to all the folks at BOM for setting this up. I'm going to read just a couple pages from Girlhood, from the essay that at least part of the image that you see here is from. It's an essay called Wild America. And it's about what a weird, savage little vegetarian child I was. Before I learned about beauty, I delighted in my body. I was a passionate child with calloused feet and lots of words. I talked fast and moved faster, through the woods around our Cape Cod home, up trees, and into the ocean's crashing surf. Finely tuned to the swells of my own and others' hearts, I sensed a deep well at my center, a kind of umbilical cord that linked me to a roiling infinity of knowledge and pathos that underlay the trivia of our daily lives. Its channel was not always open, and what opened it was not always predictable. Often songs and poems, a shaft of late afternoon light, an unexpected pool of memory, the coo of doves at dusk whose knell ached my own throat and seemed the cry of loneliness itself. It was often possible to open the channel by will, an option that I found both terrifying and irresistible. I would read or think or feel myself into a brimming state, not joy or sorrow, but some apex of their intersection, the raw matter from which each was made, then lie my back to the ground, body vibrating, heart thudding, mind foaming, thrilled and afraid that I might combust, might simply die of feeling too much. My mother had raised me vegetarian, and though I harbored no real desire to eat meat, sometimes in summer I would take a hunk of watermelon to a remote corner of our yard and pretend it was a fresh carcass. On all fours, I would bury my face in the sweet red fruit meat and tear away mouthfuls. Sometimes I'd rip handfuls out and cram them between my teeth, which wasn't much like any animal I knew of. It was less playing a particular kind of animal than enacting a form of wildness that I recognized in myself, but that had no appropriate expression in human culture. I watched Wild America along with the more savage nature specials on public television and thought, maybe. Maybe no one else recognized themselves in the hyena's blood-soaked grin, her ruthless hunger. Maybe no one else's heart raced, fists clenched, neck tensed, unable to tell if she was more impala or lion. Well, I did. Alone in the woods behind our house, I had beaten my chest, acted out my own invented stories without a thought to how another's gaze might see me. I sympathized with the jittery business of squirrels and fanatical obsessions of our golden retriever. I was confounded by silverware, why it should exist when we had such perfect instruments at the ends of our arms. Walt Whitman claimed our distinction from animals to be that they do not sweat and whine about their condition, and not one is dissatisfied, not one is demented with the mania of owning things. I learned in elementary school that we were animals, but unlike other animals, we did not seem driven by the instinct for physical survival. We were so far up the food chain that it was no longer even visible to us. We were beyond survival, in a dark and lofty realm wherein our obsolete instincts had been perverted into atrocities like capitalism and bikini waxing. I might not have been able to name this, but I recognized it. In elementary school, however, we kids were not making an ontological study of late 20th century middle class American life. We were neither learning about capitalism nor reading Whitman. We were learning how to be human. We were learning the exact way in which, though we were animals, we should not look or act like them. To call someone an animal was an insult. As my peers and I approached puberty, this was unfortunate because I had trouble keeping track of the narrative. I was covered in scabs and bruises. I was sun-browned, full of size, and interested in every orifice. I was an animal. By middle school, this felt like an especially disgusting secret because I was also a girl. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily and Melissa. It's so great to be here with you. And also thanks, Baum, for doing such a gorgeous job with this event. And thanks so much to all of you. Really glad to be here with you tonight. I am going to read just a couple pages from Justine. I don't think any context is necessary. I opened the door. The room reeked of weed. Shut it behind you. Ryan lay on his bed watching real stories of the highway patrol. His floor was covered with shirts, socks, skateboards. A stack of Thrasher magazines spilled from a plastic laundry basket. Loose change was scattered everywhere. Pennies, nickels, even quarters, along with crumpled receipts, used up matchbooks, a couple of lighters, and so many roaches. I saw near my foot what was most likely a girl's black hair elastic, a few bobby pins. This episode's dope, he said, gesturing toward the TV. Calvin Johnson and Jug Marsh talked their way out of getting arrested for possession. He didn't want to get up from the bed. Your sister just dumped a gallon of gin into the kitchen sink. Yeah, Eileen hates when mom drinks, he said. Hepatocellular carcinoma. What? Liver cancer. Oh, sorry. I'd drink too if I was married to the lieutenant. His walls were lined with CDs and cassettes, organized with the precision of a retail display. I studied the spines. They were alphabetized. Black Rob, Black Sheep, Black Star, thousands of albums. Ice Cube, Ice T, Ill Bill, Ill Mind. I stumbled over a skateboard and sat down by him on the bed. His pillowcases didn't match his sheets. I felt something under my thigh. It was a book signifying rappers, rap and race in the urban present. I placed it toward the foot of the bed. He flipped through the channels. Stephen King got hit by a car? Wait, I said. Drew Barrymore walked along a dock with a fat man. Don't you know what this is? The Amy Fisher story. I think I heard Joey Buttafuoco's a wrestler now. Amy Fisher is a porn star. Really? He shrugged. I came for the tape. I have it, he said, then turned off the TV and looked at me. My body felt like it was boiling off. He stood, unbuckled his belt, and dropped his pants to the floor. His boxers were white with maroon stripes. He removed his shirt, and his torso was pale, ropey, and all cut up. I mean, everywhere. Cuts striping the insides of his biceps, some raw, some scabby. I wanted to touch him. Something about the cuts made me realize I'd wanted to touch Ryan all this time. He was a real, naked person standing there, all cut up.